Remember,
You know what?
wasn't it?
Challenge
No, it was
me.
Safeguard. Was it Safeguard? or what?
Welcome to This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon. Listen in as him and other members of the J. Harmon Home Team speak about all things real estate with local experts here in the Middle Tennessee area. Be sure to check out jharmonhometeam.com for more information and how to get in touch with our amazing team. Welcome to the show.
Outstanding, Trent. That is beautiful intro. Still going. Yeah.
Now we're ready.
Okay. All right. Welcome to This Week in Real Estate. My name's Jonathan Harmon with the J. Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, I need you to answer something for me because we were talking, Shawn and I were talking about this right before we went live, and Trent cut me off because I couldn't figure it out. What brand of soap did Mom feed Ralphie in Christmas Story? Was it Safeguard or Lava? I couldn't remember. Do you remember?
This is important.
Can we Google it?
Yeah,
It was
I'll get to
red.
the
It was a
bottom of
red
it.
bar. I feel like it was Lava, but then I talked myself out of it, and I thought maybe it was Safeguard. So if you know, give us a response on that and tell me what brand of soap it was. This is critical.
Critical.
I mean, it is important. We were
That's
talking
a good
about
one.
emergency services. Shawn used to be in that industry, and so yeah. I mean, this maybe not require life flight or
It
anything
might.
like that.
I mean, sometimes many times there are emergencies.
If I think hard enough and my brain pops.
No, let's talk about December the 24th when all the pipes popped.
Ooh, that was one.
That's a good segue. I
Hey,
see what you did there. That was
Thanks.
awesome. Yeah.
I see what you
Trent,
did
we need to
there.
get her booked
I
on
know.
the show, man. That was fantastic. So I've got with me Shawn Rueff, and I apologize, I didn't jot this down. What's the actual name of your firm? Because if I need you, I call you. I don't call your firm.
Yeah, Dennis Young Insurance.
Dennis Young. I knew it was a person's name. I just couldn't remember whose.
That's okay.
So Shawn is with Dennis Young, and she talks insurance a lot. And I've met you through the chamber, and just great person to know, great person, great resource, a lot of fun to hang around at the chamber events. She's a good networker as well at those, but you are the first person that really educated me on, and I'm going to jump to this, but we're going to talk about the other stuff too. You educated me on private flood insurance. Prior to me knowing you, it's been, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it's been, 4 years,
At
maybe
least.
something like that. I assumed, and I was incorrect, that if you got flood insurance all the time, it was subsidized and I guess provided through a carrier that followed FEMA guidelines. And that's all changed,
It's
right?
all changed as of 2019.
Okay. So that's about the time that I met you, because that's when it was changing.
Absolutely.
Very good. So we'll come to that. There's your teaser, right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So we'll come
Okay.
back to that. So tell me what all kind of lines of insurance you sell.
Home, auto, life, commercial, flood.
Okay.
And
And-
then some.
And then some. Well, what's the and then some? What was that movie? And then. You guys remember that?
Notary bonds, surety bonds. We actually do
Ah.
that as well.
What is a notary bond? What does that mean?
You know what? I wish I could tell you more. I do, but some people need surety bonds, notary bonds.
So we had to get a surety bond when we opened the brewery. The state requires you to have a bond for a certain amount, 2 different ones depending on the licenses that you carry.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I
basically
issue those.
It's just an amount of money that's kind of on file, right? And
It is, and we issue those through my office.
Mhm.
Mhm. We can just issue. It's pretty easy, actually.
Well, how does that differ from insurance then? I mean, why would you have to carry a bond and insurance?
I honestly don't know. I've had the same question.
Hmm.
What constitutes a bond? I have no idea. But many realtors, right, require bonds, from
Hmm.
what I understand. Is that true?
I don't know. I've never run into that.
Mhm.
Maybe I need to. Trent, I need to jot that down. I know.
I just
I
had
know
one
contractors
ask.
do.
I just
Contractors have to have
I
that.
just had someone ask me for a surety bond.
Wonder if
Mhm.
they're getting a contractor's license.
Oh, maybe. I'll have to ask
I bet
her.
that's
I'll
the
ask her.
case. So what is different about, I mean, insurance in a lot of ways, in a very similar way to real estate agents, and mortgage lenders and all of that. In a lot of ways, it's kind of become commoditized, right? So I can go on to fill in the blank website and look up auto insurance and health insurance and life insurance and, basically all of this, except maybe not commercial, but all of this. And, what does it save 20%, whatever all of that stuff, right? I can do all of that without you.
No,
I
you
can.
can't.
Oh, I can. I am capable of doing it. Now, I might not do it correctly, but I can do it. I can sell my house without me, right? I can get a mortgage without Bryan at Primis Bank, right? Speaking of, we'll just go ahead and do that real quick. Thank you, Bryan Nale with Primis Mortgage for underwriting this show and all you do to help spread the positive. We're gonna roll this commercial real quick.
Sure.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that to this question. So
Fantastic.
chew on it.
really
Think of
I'm-
an answer.
I'm ready.
You are a bastard.
Hey, my name is Bryan Nale. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Primis Bank Mortgage, and I want to tell you that I absolutely love being a member of the Spread the Positive Network. It's such a great mission, and it helps bring so much positivity to our community. It's a true pleasure to be part of. There are a lot of ways to navigate financing a home, and in markets like this, having the advice of a trusted local professional is key to making sure you get the right advice for your specific circumstances. Whether you're interested in the purchase of a new home, a second home, or have a need for a refinance, I'd love to earn your trust. If I can help you nail your mortgage, call me at 615-243-3976 or visit nailyourmortgage.com, and I'll be happy to talk with you.
Primis Mortgage is a subsidiary of Primis Bank, a member FDIC, equal housing opportunity. As always, all loans are subject to approval. Primis Mortgage, NMLS number 1894879.
So vibey. I love that music.
Man, I'm sitting here giggling because there's a row of
He's a
monitors,
rat.
and all I see
He's
is a
right.
white hat sitting over here doing like this. It's
Like
just a
Night of the
little-
Roxbury.
He's
little
looking like
white
a
hat.
DJ.
It was awesome. So my point is, all of that stuff people can do on their own. Maybe they shouldn't, but they can. So what about insurance makes it something that it still makes sense to call an actual agent, to call someone that does this for a living and sit down, evaluate, like, why do I need to do that? All I have is a car and a house. That's it.
Okay. So I'm going to use auto as a prime example. Many times when you go online, they're just trying to sell you something, right? They're not trying to protect you, your family, your assets. So liability, state minimum liabilities is one example.
Mhm.
If you go online, they're just going to try to give you 25, 50, 15,000. Well, what exactly does that mean?
Because that's what the cheapest rate
That's
is.
the cheapest rate.
Mhm.
But what exactly does that mean? So let me give you an example because I came from emergency services. I saw this happen several
Sure.
times. You have a cardiac event. You rear end a family of 4, injuring 2 of them in a Tesla. Will the 25,000 per person and 50,000 per accident keep you from getting sued?
Because it doesn't cover all of their exposure, let
No.
alone your own.
When the 15,000 is going to cover the Tesla, is that going to be enough to keep you out of a lawsuit?
Nope.
No. As an advisor, I advise my people. And in fact, I make most of my clients or require most of my clients to sign off. If they want below 100, 300, 100,000, I make them sign off that they're
To
rejecting
protect
them
you.
to protect me and them.
So do you think then that state minimum coverages, like that whole, this is what the state minimum is, has it just not kept up? I mean, obviously inflation has surpassed it, and that's been a state minimum for,
Mhm.
since there's been an insurance requirement as far as I know.
I wished I could answer that, but every state is different.
Mhm.
So some states are even less than that.
Really?
And it's unfortunate because it's not talked about very much. On the homeowner side, I educate my clients on what's covered and what's not.
Mhm.
Many mistake it as a warranty, but we know it's not a warranty.
Right.
So I differentiate the two
Right.
for my clients. So that's what sets me apart as an advisor, as an advocate for you. And then furthermore, if you have a problem with claims, who are you going to call? You're going to
An
call the
800
1-800 number?
Right.
No, my clients have access to my cell phone. So let's go back to the December the 24th. I had multiple calls on December the 24th
I bet.
and was able to help them. And they're at a loss.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
we
what do I
dropped
do?
50 degrees in 6 hours or whatever it was, whatever crazy situation it
Yeah.
was.
And I was at a family gathering.
Mhm.
So they say, what do I do? And then, it's peace of mind to at least
And
get
they're
in touch with
standing in
me.
their house with a waterfall.
It
Yeah.
was horrible. I had one client that just walked away. That was not my advice. That wouldn't have been my advice, but she didn't call me, so I didn't know. The other 3 did. They had pictures. I was able to walk them through the
Turn
process.
the water off first.
Call a restoration company,
Mhm.
right? was able to walk them through. And if it wasn't livable, just go to the hotel room. Your policy
Mhm.
covers,
Mhm.
for you to be out of the house.
And you know that the policy covers it because you've educated them on what policies to get and not.
You got it.
Yeah.
And I don't give them the standard package. Most of the time, because I am an independent broker, I can give them a really, really good coverage
Mhm.
for a very good premium.
And it doesn't take much to get outside of the box as far as your exposures in insurance, does it? I mean, you have one rental property, you have a 16-year-old driver, you have a job that requires you to drive some, and all of a sudden you don't fit perfectly in the box that you would get if you went and literally checked boxes
That's correct.
on a website.
That is correct. Furthermore, as a broker, most of the time, many times you'll hear bundling. Bundle. You have to bundle, right? No, you do not have to bundle. And sometimes bundling doesn't make sense. It could be a myriad of things. It could
Mhm.
be that teen driver. It could be multiple accidents, a bad history of violations,
Mhm.
that it's not going to make sense to even bundle.
Or even legitimate claims on a previous insurance, right? So when I moved into my house, from my previous house, I had an injury claim at that house, and this is a whole story. So
Mhm.
had a little birthday party, had a gathering. It was my son's birthday. One of the kids was on the deck, come running around, hits his head on the railing, right?
Right.
Gets a little cut right here. And so now, I mean, it's bleeding, it's terrible. Everybody's freaking out. So it's like, okay, take him to the hospital,
Mhm.
take him to the emergency room. And what I didn't realize at the time is they took him to the ER, used their insurance, right?
Mhm.
Their insurance sued my homeowner's insurance.
Yep.
Where if I had said, let's take him to the ER, but I'll just pay out of pocket, I would have got a self pay discount on it. It would have cost me less. I still paid my deductible or didn't pay the deductible, but my rates went up and it stuck to me for, I don't even know, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was.
Homeowners claims goes with
And it
you,
would have been
just like
cheaper.
your auto
Yeah.
claims. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. Well, I've sold that house. It doesn't matter, but it does.
Because you are the same person and you're the one that did that claim is
That
how
is
that
correct.
has been explained.
One of the good things about homeowners claims, if it was due to a catastrophic event, many times I can exclude those.
Sure.
If
Like a
I'm,
hailstorm or tornado or
you got it.
whatever.
If I can link it to a catastrophic event,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, let's talk commercial for just a second. So I had to get commercial insurance for the first time last year. And oh man, I felt like they wanted access to everything.
They
They
do.
asked all kinds of
It's
questions.
a completely different ballgame.
And we were a brand new business. So it was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that was very often the answer. We think it's going to be, I have no idea yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what we were told was get through a year and then you'll know a little bit better and then we can reassess. And that's fine. I mean, it makes sense, but if you're starting that small business, that's something you need to be aware is that insurance cost at the beginning could be significantly more than what you write on your initial budget.
Wow, you figured it out. When do you want to become an insurance
I
agent?
don't. I don't. I'm good. Thanks.
Because it is an eye-opening experience whenever you're first starting a business. And
Mhm.
I actually have great business partners that can help and assist with starting their own business. For example, many people don't know what an EIN number is.
Mhm.
What is a tax ID number? And why do I even need that? Do I need general liability? Do I need to insure a building or even a commercial vehicle? So
And how many different ways can people get hurt in my freaking building?
I
Oh my
know,
word.
I know, they totally can. And then there's the whole fraud coverage,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
you need it. Commercial insurance is needed, but absolutely. For example, I have a business insured right now. This is their 3rd year, right? So I can most likely
You have a
get
pretty good
them.
idea.
Yeah, I can get a good idea.
Mhm.
Potentially, I could put them somewhere else and be cheaper, right?
Mhm.
However, if there's risk involved called underwriting guidelines, don't you love that word? We all
Mhm.
have underwriting guidelines. They might not be a good fit for some of my standard companies because
Mhm.
maybe they have a dartboard or a dance floor.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
those are just one of many.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the
Sounds like a
general
great idea to put a dartboard up
it's
until you think about somebody getting it to the eye.
exactly.
Yeah.
Everything seems like a good idea at the time until you start talking to me. No, I'm kidding. Insurance doesn't have to be
Do you,
horrible.
is that you? Is that you? Like you're at dinner with a bunch of friends and they're like, "Oh, we did this," and you're like, "Oh, do you know how bad that exposed you to risk?"
Yes.
Are you that person?
I can be a bit of an insurance nerd, I admit. Like, what are you talking about? You can't rent that property.
Did you get a special policy just for that?
I did. I do it all the time. It's embarrassing. I've become the insurance nerd of the
That's
group.
hilarious. I love
Or
that.
I like roofs. If I'm driving to, oh, that's a beautiful roof. What has happened to me?
And you're like in shingles.
What is happening to
Yeah,
me?
the other person in the car is like,
I like that metal roof.
you're like,
Nobody.
"Ooh, there's Ridge Vent up there. I wonder if they use the Cobra brand." Isn't it?
Exactly. That's an architectural. Yeah, I know that. That's awesome.
I bet they didn't use ice and water shield.
That's me.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, that's hilarious. All right, so let's start with flood now for a second, because that was kind of I mean, it was the first conversation that we ever had. We talked about flood insurance. And I don't remember exactly how it happened. You were talking to a group or something, and you said something, and I was like, really? And so we started talking about flood insurance. And again, what I said before is, for the longest time, and maybe this was the case for a while, the only flood insurance that you could really get, other than maybe a rider on your regular homeowner's insurance,
Correct.
was subsidized and managed essentially by FEMA, right?
That's correct.
And that's just not the case anymore, is it?
That is not. As of 2019. So, but there is some confusion
Hmm.
in regards to flood insurance. And there are some loans that I know one in particular, an FHA loan, does not qualify for a private flood.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, make sure you write that down.
I did not know that.
And so I would have to write that with what we call NFIP, the federal flood plan.
Hmm.
And there's really no other options. There's really no other way around it. But to my knowledge, that's only loan that will not qualify for a private flood carrier.
I mean, that makes sense. It's a government loan, so they're going to support the home team there, aren't they?
Exactly. But the beauty of this is I shop it. So I shop both at NFIP.
And that's the thing, is that you couldn't shop it before.
That is
It
correct.
didn't matter if you went to 20 different insurance companies. It was the same, because FEMA said this is what the premium is.
You got it.
Hmm.
And many lenders at the time didn't recognize it. So there was some pushback, but it was all came back to education. So I was able to supply the information surrounding, yes, you could go with a private flood carrier as long as it wasn't an FHA loan. And this is my quote versus the other quote.
So what's the benefit of private versus the FEMA stuff?
Cost and coverage.
Okay. Tell me more.
Typically more coverage. First of all, NFIP is typically going to top out at $250,000 in coverage.
Really?
If you are buying a $400,000 home in a flood zone, that's not going to cover that.
I mean, it might if it just floods, right?
If it just floods, but maybe not.
What if it
I mean,
washes
think of
away?
all the Texas, many of those Texas homes that just kind of drifted away and went away. Private will allow you to make it whatever it needs to be. Now, we use what's called replacement cost estimators. I'm about to go insurance nerd on you again. So if you're wanting $700,000 coverage on what would be a $500,000 home, that's not going to work.
You got to justify it.
Yeah, and I would explain that to my clients. But we use what's called replacement cost estimators. Information, square footage, is it brick, vinyl, crawl space, basement? What is it going to cost to actually replace this home? And we insure based on what it's going to cost to replace it, not market value.
Hmm.
I can do that with a private flood, where I can't do that with NFIP at the $250,000 cap.
Gotcha. So those cost estimators have always been interesting to me. I've argued both directions on them before, where they come back and they say, here's the cost estimator. And I'm like, it's impossible. There's no way I can replace this for that. Like, it's just not possible.
Mhm.
Oh, well, what do you have that you didn't tell me about? I'm like, nothing. Lumber. I mean, lumber is more expensive than that.
Mhm.
And then I've been on the other side of it, where they're like, oh, it's this number square foot, or like my old house had a basement, and it was like a half basement, like a daylight basement or whatever that they call it.
Right.
And I told my guy, I was like, you're not even close to the right number. And he came back at like, we're going to insure it for $700,000. I'm like, I paid 300, and it's not like, it was wrong the other way. And so that made my premiums way high.
Exactly.
So they're not flawless, but you have to. Yeah, I mean, you have to really do your homework to justify a big deviation from that.
So if it's more like a 1900s type of home, I would put that in as a vintage
Hmm.
home. So those are adjustments that can be made in that replacement cost
Yeah, because
estimator.
replacing like my house now, built in 1900 whatever,
Mhm.
it's going to cost significantly more because to get it back to the same.
And of course, the coverage goes up, your premium goes up.
Hmm.
But that's where sometimes reshopping makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm. Gotcha. So, what are because I remember there being some other parameters on the flood insurance. The you told me something else. If the structure is in a flood zone, you're better off shopping. How did there was something about that? If it is in a flood zone, or if it's in a certain kind of flood zone, versus I just want to have flood insurance just in case, like the folks up at Opryland,
Right.
they weren't in a flood zone and yet
They
they were
flooded.
flooded. Yeah.
So here is what I'm finding because I am a broker and I can shop it. I'm going to shop it either way. If it's in a flood zone, I'm going to shop it with NFIP and the private.
Hmm.
But what I'm finding is when it's in a flood zone, the private flood carrier offers more coverage for less.
Okay.
When not in a flood zone and you just want peace of mind, typically NFIP is the same sufficient coverage for less. And so I utilize both systems.
Because theoretically, if you're not in a flood zone, you don't have to worry as much. So that $250,000 cap is probably
It's
okay.
sufficient typically.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, when we talk about this is floods created by water outside the house, right?
That's correct.
So it is not the same thing as a flood created by water inside the house. So tell me about that.
So,
Like my house can flood
mhm,
because of something inside the house, but that's
correct.
not flood insurance.
That is correct. So if you have a busted pipe, okay, let's go back to the December 24th because it's so near and dear to us, right?
Hmm.
So December the 24th, that water busted and it was due to a natural event,
Hmm.
natural causes, right? It was water freezing, the temperatures were cold, and the water busted. That's actually typically covered by flood insurance because it was a catastrophic. I'm sorry, typically covered by homeowners insurance because that's a catastrophic event. Water coming down gets underneath your shingles and into your sheetrock. That's typically covered by your homeowner's insurance. But water rising, like the Waverly floods, like the ones in Florida, that is flood insurance. Water rising, flood insurance. Water coming down, homeowner's insurance.
So let's take the folks in Opryland, for example. Okay. They don't have flood insurance because they're not in a flood zone. They're not required to. They're however many 30 feet, 40 feet, whatever above the river. But yet they flood. They don't have flood insurance. Are they just, quite literally up a creek?
Unfortunately.
So they have no coverage
No.
for that. Wow.
Mhm.
So what do they do?
Get out alone. It's unfortunate, but it's real.
Man,
I know.
that sucks.
Yes, it does.
We're going to shift gears a little bit. I've got two questions, two things that come up decently often in my line of work that I want you to address.
Okay.
So the first one is vacancies within your home. So talking about the busted pipe. Okay, it's December 24th. What if I left town, left the country December 22nd, right? And I don't come back until January 22nd. I'm gone for a month to go visit whoever.
Mhm.
Pipe bust, floods the house for a month, right? Like it's bad. Do I have a problem at this point? Other than obviously my house is in shambles.
Well, you didn't call me, right? You didn't call your insurance agent. I would have advised you on different things to do.
Turn the water off at the street.
Turn the water off, get someone, you have a property manager,
Mhm.
that you have access to. Do you have a friend or family member that can go and check on,
Mhm.
your home? In insurance, everything is covered differently, right? So you have primary residence, potentially a secondary residence, seasonal residence, landlord
Mhm.
policy, vacant policy, renter's policy,
Mhm.
right? And all of these are written different. They're all written on different forms. A renter's policy is, your stuff.
It just covers
It just
stuff.
covers your stuff,
Mhm.
for example,
Couches and TVs.
couches and TV. So I advise my clients in situations like that always, think of your homeowner's insurance like your auto insurance agent, right? Who do you contact when you add or eliminate a vehicle? Your insurance agent.
Mhm.
The same goes for your home. If you're making drastic changes to your home, if you're making additions to your home, if you're leaving home for an extended period of time, please call me to discuss it, to
Okay.
give you some
So
to give
let's
you some pointers.
pretend I didn't call you and I
Mhm.
walk back in a month later and,
It
it's
should be covered.
okay, still covered.
Mhm.
But the flip side of that is, let's say that I move out of my house and I'm prepping it to get it to rent it. I'm becoming a landlord. I'm not there yet, right?
Right.
But I've totally moved out of the house. Maybe I'm doing some renovation work, whatever. Same thing happens. I haven't been in there in a month. I may not be covered at that point,
You are
correct?
correct. Man, you're good at this. You've done this a few times, huh?
Once or twice.
Vacant insurance. So it would be a vacant policy.
Hmm.
The moment that you move out of that residence and move into somewhere else, and that property is vacant, considered vacant, an adjuster goes in there and there's nothing in there to show that you even live there, that's a problem
Hmm.
because it's written as a primary residence. It's obviously vacant. Now you have some claims questions.
So, if you're watching this, and you may already know this, and maybe I was just slow to the party, and I only learned this in the last year. If you move out of your house for any reason, if you take your stuff out, maybe you're renovating, maybe you're going to turn it into a rental, whatever. The moment that you do that, you need to let your insurance person know.
Absolutely. Most likely it's going to require a vacant policy, especially if it's going to be vacant for more than 30 days.
Mhm.
If your intention is to move out of it, like I have a client right now, this is exactly what he's doing. He's purchasing a home, primary home. When he moves out, he's immediately renting it. He already
Mhm.
has a contract in place. That's now going to be a landlord policy.
Right.
Works completely separate,
Right.
but he's getting ahead of it, right? He contacted me. We have a plan in place, effective dates, and we're moving forward with that plan.
And even if let's say you're getting your hardwoods redone or something like that, right? You move all your stuff out of there so they have access to the floors. You're only going to be gone 2 or 3 weeks, but you're going to have different people in your house doing different things. Probably still ought to contact your insurance person.
Always. So you can just get some advice, on how to keep you and your property safe.
And maybe the advice is, "Oh, you're good. Don't worry about it." Well, cool.
Exactly.
At least now you know, right?
Well, and then let's talk about out of towners. If you are living out of state and this is a secondary home in Tennessee, my
Certainly.
advice is going to be very different for you,
Mhm.
right? Who do you have in place? Do you have someone? What my insurance companies want to know is someone dropping by, the house? Do you have video? Do you have cameras somewhere
Or
located?
are you actually, I don't live there, but I Airbnb it 3
Exactly.
nights a week.
Oh my goodness.
That's
So
totally
that's a
different.
completely different. So Airbnb,
Mhm.
I have to insure completely different, and many companies won't accept Airbnb risk.
Interesting.
So
Very
then I have
interesting.
to move a different direction with those.
Yeah. The other thing that we've run into, and this is language that you guys use in your line of work here, is the idea of something being a new event. And you mentioned this with the pipe thing, and this is what made me think about this. So you have to be able to, if pushed, you have to be able to prove that whatever the damage is that's been done is new damage,
Correct.
right?
That is correct.
And sometimes that's difficult if it's an issue that's actually started, however long ago, and you only discover it now.
Exactly. You just have to prove it. You have to have all of your ducks in a row. What I advise people is always keep documentation on your home. You keep documentation. You keep your oil changes for your car,
Mhm.
right? So keep your documentation on your home. I did have this situation one time where I had a client that delayed filing a claim or moving forward with correcting it, and a year later, he wants to file a claim. It's a no-go.
Mhm.
They declined it. So you do have to just take care of your home like you do your car.
And I'd say you get into this probably the most with water, right?
This was
Leaks
water. Absolutely.
and probably roofs.
You got
Is
it.
that correct?
That is correct. However, there are things called slow leaks, and I'm a prime example. I had a dishwasher, plastic bottom slowly leaking, little drips that I didn't know was even there going on
Mhm.
underneath. Next thing I knew, there's a buckle on the floor. Right?
But
Slow
in that
leak.
situation, you didn't really there's not a really a reasonable expectation that you would discover it, right?
Correct. But those are hard to prove.
Right, and the same,
Any type of water.
you see that a lot with, water pipe nail, and it goes into the water pipe, and then eventually that nail rusts, and then
Yes.
you have a leak.
Exactly. So those are pretty, I mean, if it was an abrupt situation, I mean, I've had both, right? I had a
Sure.
pipe bust, but I was able to get to it, get the water cleaned up and move on.
Mhm.
But then the slow leak, those are really hard to prove.
Yeah.
Did you really know it?
And they can be devastatingly damaging.
Mine
Mold and
was.
everything else, yeah.
Exactly. So, I have those resources, those mitigation companies that I partner with that can get to your situation, mitigate it, whether that get the water up, and then check for mold, and then move forward with correcting it and getting you back to normal.
We're gonna talk one other thing because this comes up a bunch when you're purchasing a home, and that is there's a product out there, and I know that there's other versions of it, but I guess the commercial product is the Clue report.
Mhm.
And I think I remember what it stands for: Comprehensive Loss Underwriting Evaluation. Am I right?
I think you're right. You might have just taught me something.
Call the J. Harmon Home Team for all of your needs when it involves the home. But,
Yes, go team.
But basically, it's like a Carfax for a house, right?
That's correct.
And so, and why is that important? Why do you need to know the claims history of a home that you're purchasing?
Repetition. I mean, it's very similar to a car. How many times has the car been in an accident?
Hmm.
Are you going to have future problems? So
And if you
I'm
do have a future
looking
problem, is it a recurrence of a past problem?
that hasn't been corrected.
And so you've only band-aided it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's important for us and my underwriters to know the history of that house. Now, we don't necessarily have to let the new homeowner know that,
Mhm.
right? But we need to know if there's 4 claims in 4 years on a home that someone else is about to purchase, there's going to be questions from my underwriting team. Is this resolved? Is
So
the problem solved?
do you guys pull that underwriting evaluation on every new policy, every new house?
It's a requirement.
Okay. And do you share that with the purchaser? Obviously, that would be your client.
Not unless there's a cause for concern.
Mhm.
Not unless there's a significant amount of repetition.
I see.
Mhm.
So
That we would then have to ask the buyer.
the one that gets me, and this is why it's been important to me to look at this. There's one particular red flag, and it's funny you mentioned this. Driving through a neighborhood and you look and you see new roof, new roof, new roof, new roof, and it's pretty easy if you know what you're looking for to tell if it's a new roof or not. New, let's say within the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. And the one you're looking at, you're like, old roof, but yet every other house is new. That is an instant red flag to me.
Mhm.
Because that means that there's probably damage. If everything else was damaged and got replaced, was there like a bubble over it like Wile E. Coyote and it just didn't get damaged? Probably not, right? So then the question becomes, have they never made a claim? Which that's a problem,
Mhm.
right? It may be
Correct.
aged out and it's not yours anyway, so they would have to be the ones to make the claim. That's one. Or more devious than that, did they make a claim, stick that check in their pocket, and not fix the roof? And now it's yours to deal with. Because if that's the case, then what happens?
That's a very good question. That's when I'm going to get my adjuster involved. If there's some type of abuse and it does come back, if I filed a claim and I'm not the adjuster is the expert to
Mhm.
review that. Then we have to readdress
But you
it
may
with the
have to
homeowner.
exclude the roof, right?
Yes.
So if they've already been paid for that roof and didn't fix it, then it's possible that the new homeowner can get homeowner's insurance on everything about that house except the roof.
Except the roof. Well, typically, I'm not going to ever exclude the roof. I mean, I might have to write it in actual cash value, meaning a depreciated value.
Which if it's a 20-year shingle and it's a 15-year, you might as well exclude it. You're gonna get,
Exactly. Well, and
$1,200.
every company is different
Mhm.
because I'm a broker and I represent so many different companies. I see things differently.
Mhm.
So every underwriting company is different. Many will not insure over 15 years
Right,
at full replacement cost.
right, because it's
Over
already
20
basically
years,
dead.
exact 20
Mhm.
years at full replacement cost. Therefore, I have to divert. But I always tell my client that's where the difference between an advisor and something online and someone online,
Right.
they might not explain if you have a roof
They might
claim.
not be able to explain, Shawn. They're just punching buttons.
True. That is true. But I will tell my client, look, my underwriting guidelines wouldn't allow me to write you at full replacement cost. I will have to write you at an actual cash value,
And it's
which would be
important to know what that
depreciated.
means. So here's the other thing, and I have I finally just accepted this. Okay, I struggle with terminology sometimes, right? And so when people are, especially insurance, I don't know why I cannot get like premiums and like the words just confuse me. And there are times when I'm talking to insurance people, you people, and I'm like, finally, I'm just like, time out. Let's talk
It's
about
too
that for a second.
much. It's too much.
So when you say premium, that's what I pay? Is that right? And what's the difference between that and a deductible? Because I
Mhm.
pay that too, you know. And so like I'm over feeling dumb, right?
Well, hopefully I
I'm
can help
going
you.
I'm going to ask dumb questions, and you're either going to have to deal with it or you're not going to deal with me, right?
Right.
So if you're listening, probably the number one thing I would tell you is do not be afraid to ask a question that you think you should, quote unquote, know, right? It's okay to go back to the basics and say, now what's a deductible again? It's okay to do that because this is making you safer, right? You
Exactly.
need to understand it.
I love educating my clients. But just want to reiterate, I didn't come from this industry. So I
Mhm.
see things very differently. And as a homeowner, no one took the time to explain it. I
And usually you
literally,
don't. And a lot of homeowners are embarrassed
Mhm.
to ask something that they feel like they should know. Well, screw that. If you
Exactly.
don't know, you don't know.
I work outside of normal business hours. So let me just put this out there. I work outside of normal business hours. I love getting a couple on the phone because many times you're just dealing with one out
Mhm.
of the two.
Mhm.
I love
It
getting
gets
them on
delegated.
there at 7 o'clock at night on speakerphone. They put me on speakerphone and we knock it out.
Mhm.
And what the husband has questions, maybe the wife has a different question, and I just go through this. And can I like give you 2 minutes and go through what's not covered, for example?
Yes. See,
Okay.
that is
So I'm about to go into like, this is my routine, right?
yeah.
This is what I go through with all of my clients. I will not issue a policy without going through this scenario.
All right, what's not covered?
Okay. So if you think of your homeowner's insurance like your auto insurance,
Okay.
okay, it's just old. You wouldn't expect auto insurance to replace a muffler, an engine, an old transmission. Same goes for homeowners
Mhm.
insurance.
So the
Okay. If it's
dishwasher
just old,
quits working.
if it's just old,
Mhm.
if water comes down, gets under your shingles, into your sheetrock, that's typically covered. What's not covered is water rising. Flood is not covered on your policy.
Right.
Earthquake can be an endorsement. I
Right.
can
You
actually
add that.
I can add earthquake. But for general age, old age on a roof or an AC unit, not covered. If lightning strikes that roof and that AC unit, however, that's typically covered.
I have actually prayed for hail before, just so you know.
Did it work?
Mhm.
Oh, good,
Yeah, it
good.
worked
I'm
out.
glad. Arson is not covered. Don't set your house on fire, Jonathan.
I've
Got it?
thought about it.
Don't ever
I've
do
never
that.
done it. I have thought about it.
Don't ever do it. Arson is not covered.
Okay.
Vermin, meaning termites, squirrels, mice, birds, snakes. Anything that causes damage like that
Mhm.
is not covered.
So snakes would be one of the few things that would actually get me to set my house on
Oh,
fire.
I believe that.
Mhm.
I probably would
I
do
don't
the
do
same.
snakes.
I don't either.
I'm like Indiana Jones. Why does it always gotta be snakes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's not covered.
Mhm.
To my knowledge, no insurance agency as of 2019, there were a lot of changes in 2019, covers what's called vermin.
Mhm.
Okay. If you see water bubbling in the middle of your yard, typically not covered. It has to affect the home. And remember, I'm insuring a structure.
Mhm.
I'm insuring your fence, your swimming pool, outbuildings. That's why I ask those questions.
Mhm.
What other structures do you have that are detached from your home that I need to insure? I need to make sure that I give you enough coverage. Your home and your stuff is typically covered.
Got it. What about something like landscaping? Okay. So scenario, you get all new landscaping done on your house. You spend however many $1,000s to do that. And let's just say, for example, 2.5 months later, the temperature drops 50 degrees in the span of 6 hours and it kills everything.
That's a good question.
Is that covered?
That is a good question. I would actually have to ask my adjuster. Mhm.
I've already gotten one answer. I didn't like the answer that I got from that question. So, just
I think
curious.
that everything's up for discussion. I mean,
Mhm.
there's some things. Okay, let me. This one was not. This is not a great scenario, but there are things that are covered that are unique situations. I got a call about a year and a half ago, and it was heartbreaking because the question was, does insurance companies pay for cleanup? Well, what kind of cleanup? Unfortunately, this was
Bio.
a very bad situation, so I'm not going to go into detail
Sure.
about it. But at the end of the day, there's coverage embedded in the policy that
Mhm.
covered for that type of cleanup.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so it's reassuring to me that insurance actually pays for things outside the norm that I wasn't even aware of. So the shrubs, for example, if they're yanked up by a tornado, typically they're going to be covered at a max. Okay.
Gotcha.
There's a cap off, right?
And
There's a
that's
cap.
another thing to think about is, and this is, it is important if you have some type of a collection, if you have something that's a little bit more than normal, you need to, what do they call it, scheduling it out. Is that right? Where you document each
So
item.
I have a client right now who wheels and deals with guns.
Hmm.
I encouraged him to do something that
And
he
firearms
now
are covered,
firearms are
but
covered,
there's a max
but
usually.
there's a cap,
Hmm.
right? Jewelry is as well.
Hmm.
So if there's a theft, there's typically a max, and they wipe out your whole jewelry collection. There's
Hmm.
typically a max.
Hmm.
Firearms the same way.
And it's not very high usually.
No,
It's enough to cover like one or two,
it's
maybe.
bad. No, it's not great
Hmm.
at all. So I encourage you to, it's called an endorsement, an inland marine endorsement. Musical instruments are another one. So something that, okay, so my rings, you're going to be taking with you. Firearms, you might be taking in and outside the house,
Hmm.
right? Musical instruments, guitars,
Hmm.
violins, you're going to be taking in and outside the house. So I would highly encourage endorsing those separately so you have the coverage that you expect, because just a general policy is not going to cover that stolen collection.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
But the guns, back to that, the wheeling and dealing, same with jewelry, same with musical instruments. I would encourage you to throw those into an Excel spreadsheet, put the value on
Or at
those.
the very least, video. Right.
Video. So I had this question, well, what if my house burns down? And I have that list, and the list is now eliminated. What I encourage my clients to do is actually send me the list
Mhm.
in an email, and then I put it in my database. I put
Well,
it in my
and if
file.
nothing else, at that point, it's you've got an electronic version of it. But if you even just shoot a video and either text it or email a copy of that video.
Yeah, I've spoiled this client a little.
Yeah.
Because I add and eliminate guns for him and then add them onto his policy. So it makes it easy. We're
Mhm.
exchanging the same Excel spreadsheet.
Hmm.
And then I can go down the list. Do you still have this one, this one, this one, this one? Okay, I'm replacing this one with this one. You're covered sufficiently.
Love it. All right, Shawn, we're out of time. What is the best way if somebody wants to ask you some insurance questions? What is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
My cell phone.
Okay.
So I work realtor hours, as you can appreciate, Jonathan. So if you're showing a home on the weekend,
Hmm.
most of the time I'm accessible.
Okay.
I think I have a life. I'm not 100% sure anymore.
I mean, it's a version of a life.
I
Yeah.
love my life.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah, yeah.
complain. My cell phone is the best way to get in touch with me. I use all forms of communication. You can call me on my cell. You can text me on my cell, 931-224-0137. And I work really well with email as well, sr@younginsur.com.
Got it. And we'll put that in the comments as well. Shawn, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what
having
you
me.
do and watching out for folks. And if you have insurance questions, get them to me and we'll get them over to Shawn. If you have real estate questions, of course, ask us. And if you need a mortgage, let's talk to Bryan Nale. He's the man. So, Trent, you got anything?
I do not.
No? Everything's good in your world? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. A little volleyball action down in
Nice.
Atlanta. Yep.
Nice. How's the coach doing?
She's good. They went 5-1, lost to the team that won the whole thing. So
Outstanding.
yeah, they did really well.
Way to go, Miss Kristen.
Yep. Coach KJ in the building.
Love it. Love it.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So,
Fun.
all right. Well, that's it. That's all we got today on This Week in Real Estate. Thanks for watching. And if you didn't watch or listen, then thanks for nothing. See you soon. Bye.